Now, the fifth generation, our focus is on the fifth generation. If you look at the pie, this is the altogether 371 members of the current Central Committee, and including both full members and alternates. You can see that only about 7% born in the 1960s. Maybe we call them sixth generation, but almost half, 49.9%, are born in 1950s. These are the so-called members of fifth generation. Now, this is the 16th Party Congress, the Standing Committee, the 9 most powerful figures. And as we know, 4 of them either retire or die. And Li Changchun promoted to number 5th, and they added 4 more leaders, including these 2, Xi Jinping and Li Keqiang, belong to the so-called 5th generation. Now, among the new Parliament Bureau, there are altogether 6 members belong to that so-called 5th generation, including the 2 people I just mentioned. One is Vice President Xi Jinping, the other is Executive Vice Premier Li Keqiang. There are 4 others, including Bo Xilai, Wang Jisan, Bo Xilai, Li Yuancao, and Wang Yang. Now, the most important, interesting thing is these 6 people are equally divided. 3 are principals. All of their fathers or father-in-law are former vice premiers, and the other 3 really advanced their career from Chinese Communist Youth League, really protégés of Hu Jintao. Now, also, let's look at the new secretary. There are altogether 6 people. Among them, 4 of them are 5th generation, including Xi Jinping and Wang Funing is from Shanghai, a member of Shanghai Gang. The other 2 is Li Yuancao and Lin Jihua, 222. The other 2 is the 4th generation. Now look at the vice premiers, also altogether there are 4. This includes both 5th and 4th generation, also 2 from each. Now state councillors, there are altogether 5. One of them is from military. Let's delete that person from military. Military is supposed to be neutral, right? So 2 to 4. Do you think it's coincidental? I don't think so. This is the competition of the faction party so intense. They don't want any person that not belong to strong faction ties enter the important leadership body. Now, here is the 16th and 17th Central Committee. The AM is alternate members. FM is 4 members. You can see the number of the Tuanpai increased from 16th Central Committee 50 to 86. 86 out of these 371, about 23% are Tuanpai. Again, Tuanpai is a core group of the populist coalition. The princelings also increased, but not that significantly. Now you may ask, earlier that I said that equally powerful. How could you explain this is certainly not equally powerful, right? Tuanpai certainly have more seats. Now this we should also look at their division of labors. Now, this is the study I conducted before the Party Congress, 2007. These are the rising stars of the so-called Tuanpai leaders. They all serve as provincial chiefs, about 22 of them. This is the experience, the rural work, industrial work, foreign trade, finance, organization work, propaganda. You can see Tuanpai leaders are very strong in rural work, also very strong in propaganda, have some experience in industrial work or organization work, but 0 in foreign trade, almost 0 in finance. So they desperately need elitists to cooperate with them. Now, in terms of labor, division of labor in the administrative areas, populist coalition usually control party organization, propaganda, united front work, law and party discipline, and provincial leadership. In contrast, elitist coalition control economic administration because they have expertise, foreign trade and finance, foreign affairs, education and science and technology, and also relatively control military affairs and public security. Now, let's look at these economic policy makers. Vice President Xi Jinping, Vice Premier Wang Jisan, and the State Councilor Ma Kai, former Minister of NDRC, and governor of People's Bank, Zhou Xiaochuan, and chairman of the CIC, also the chair of the Development Bank. They have one thing in common: they are all princelings. Now, also, this is the research conducted by Central Party School and the State Council Research Center. I still have difficult to verify, but widely cited in Chinese media. About 85 to 90% of CEOs and the senior VPs of the foreign sectors are princelings, including finance, foreign trade, land and resource development, major construction projects, and the security and the stock. In this most lucrative business, they are very much controlled by princelings. Now, also, according to the same study, about 91% of the richest people in China who own 100 million yuan, 亿万富翁, are princelings. Now, actually, I was in Shanghai 2 weeks ago. I listened to the radio called Dongfang. I forgot that's a very major radio in Shanghai. They actually cited some of the statistics, talk about the princelings control. This is quite remarkable. Taizidang control these major resources. This is Shanghai radio. Now, let me move to the second major change. It's a new generation, new identities, very quickly. Now, fifth generation, as I mentioned, is the lost generation. And we also see the trend of decline of technocrats, meaning the engineer turned politicians. They start to decline. There also increase of sea turtles, returnees, and finally, the rise of entrepreneurs. Now, let's very quickly look at their background in terms of lost generation. Many of them actually were so-called set-down youths. During the Cultural Revolution, they were sent to the countryside, work as farmers for many years or even decades. Let's look at these rising stars. Xi Jinping spent 6 years in Yan'an. Li Keqiang spent also 6 years in Dafeng, one of the poorest counties in Anhui. And Wang Jisan also spent a few years in Yan'an. And finally, Li Yuanzhao also spent some years in Dafeng, also very poor place in northern Jiangsu. Now, also in terms of decline technocrats in the 17th party power bureau, from 75% to now 40% in a very short period of time. Let's look at the education background defined by the highest degree they attain. Xi Jinping got law degree, Li Keqiang economics, Li Yuanzhao law from Central Party School, Wang Jisan got his highest degree in his undergraduate degree in history, Wang Yang master management, Bo Xilai master journalism, Wang Funing law, and Ling Jihua MBA. These 8 rising stars, none of them has highest degree in engineering. So drastic change. Now, this is many of them actually belong to so-called the famous 1982 class. They entered college through national examination. As we know, this is Li Keqiang on the left, and the next to him is Wang Zhaowang. I really want to show this picture to him. Of course, he knows that picture, and I want to get some information from him about what's going on. Again, famous class, the law class. Some of them in the legal profession. A couple of them actually become very critical of the regime. Now, this is the rapid rise and decline of technocrats. Technocrats defined, again, got engineering and science degree. They started to emerge in 1982. Actually, among the ministers, there's only one 1982, which was Li Pen. So 2%, 0% for provincial party secretary, 0% for governor in 1982. But it increased to about 30% in 5 years later. Then reached a peak in 1997. About 70% for ministers, 74% for provincial party secretary, 77% for governors, but now declined last year. So this is the drastic change of rise and decline of technical